I was not paying attention. So, welcome to today's show. This is 22nd Century Management with Ken. And with me today, I have Pam Hackett, and she is going to talk with us about building engagement in your workforce. To get started, though, Pam, you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Oh gosh, 35 years with a company called Proudfoot, the innovator of operations consulting. So we're the guys who go boots on the ground, mines, 4,000 meters up in the Andes, Bank of America, right through to, financial services, right through to just about any industry. So it's a great way to see the world of engagement because you get to see so many different industries. And having spent 35 years with Proudfoot, you really get to see a few interesting things. And that's really what prompted me to write a book on the whole subject. Really, how do you get people to engage, particularly today in a world full of technology?
Okay, well, very good. And I love your background. I am looking forward to our conversation today. And do me a favor, if you're listening on on LinkedIn, let me know where you're listening from and make sure that you can hear us okay. So if you would put that in the comments, and I'll just take a quick look here. So we'll give you guys a chance to do that. And let me ask my first question for you, Pamela. What employment engagement is all about and what it's not? So in this post-pandemic environment, how have things changed?
That is probably the big question of the hour, and that's particularly since so many people have gone remote. But I think what you've got to also remember is a lot of people haven't. A lot of people really still were boots on the ground, in their workplace. And so you've got to bring both of those pieces together, right? Today, post-pandemic world, you have to be a leader who's able to connect with people who are remote and a leader who can connect with people who are at the workplace. And maybe you're the leader who's not at the workplace, who's completely remote. A lot of the companies that we work for have got that scenario happening. So employee engagement, I think that the interesting thing about it is a lot of people think that HR is going to handle it, or that the L&D guys are going to handle it, that it's all about these wonderful perks and policies and ping pong tables and things that are going to make employees excited. And of course, at the end of the day, it's really not about that. It's all in the hands of you, the boss, the supervisor, the team leader, the guy who's caring for a team. So it's really about what you do every single day. How do you bring yourself to work? How do you connect with people? And then at the same time, what kind of environment do you build for them? Is it an environment that they can be productive? I think the big thing about employee engagement is that you've got to look at it as a solution to productivity issues, to transformation issues. You've got to really see it as something that's critical to the business. It can't be this soft and fluffy thing over there that HR looks after. So a bit of a long answer, but and then what does it look like when your team's all in, when they show up every day and they want to help you solve the problems of the day, the week, the hour, the month, or the year?
And I agree with so much of what you said because I think that, I teach service management, and one of the challenges that I think that every manager has is getting his team to become fully engaged and active. And I have worked in environments that absolutely stifled employment engagement. I've worked in places that, just absolutely shut down the ability to and any motivation to try to make things better. You just kind of punch the clock, and that was all you did. So I think trying to build engagement is so valuable.
Can you imagine being one of those guys who just hates their job? I can't imagine getting out of bed in the morning with a thud, instead of a bounce, and looking forward to getting to work. And I just think that's the thing. If you're the boss, that's your job. You got to fix that problem.
Yes. And I think that it is a challenge that a lot of us may fail to engage as fully in working on that as we should. So let me ask this next question then. How is it that you raise your head from the technology and connect with your people using simple yet innovative practices? And you mentioned in your book several. You included HeadsUP High 5 and 1.5.30 Connect.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for reading the book. Exactly. All of that's in there. So So if I step back before I get into all of those tools and give just a little bit of context for you, and that's that if something that we have found when we worked, and just again a little bit more context. So we've done 50,000 engagements with clients and coached about 1 million leaders. That gives a huge richness of information. It gives you a real understanding as to what works and what doesn't. And so from that, what we've really seen is one really simple but hard to do thing. And that's that the more active the management, the better the results in the business. And so what I mean by that is exactly what you just said. The guys who lift their heads up, they take their noses out of their technology, out of their devices. They stop reading their reports. They get all the data so they can have really interesting conversations using it. But then they get out and they connect with their people, whether that's remotely or physically. Going heads up is all about, look, listen, and learn. Look around you, connect with people, see what's going on, and then have conversations that can help people do a better job. Let them get all of the stuff that stops people from being unsuccessful, get it out of the way of them. And the only way you can do that is if you're actively engaged in the business, right? If you're really seeing what's going on. And so that's kind of the real principle, if you like. The starting point is, let's get the supervisors, the managers, particularly the frontline team leaders, because they're the guys who hold engagement in their hands. Let's get them active. All of us, let's get active and in the business. Let's get in the game. And once you do that, you've got heads up as a guiding principle. Just take that time, find the time, prioritize the time to lift your head, your nose up, and actually connect with people. Once you do that, a lot of people say, then they kind of say, well, what do I do? How do I actually, what do you mean get active? Does it mean that I have to be out there and, jog with the guys? And yeah, it does. But in a really structured rhythm, to inject that rhythm to your day. So that's where we bring something in that's called 1-5-30. And it's as simple as that. You want to bring a rhythm to the world. And the more rhythm you have, the more rhythm your teams understand. And they start to know that actually you're going to connect with them routinely. It's not a once in a while, oh my goodness, the boss is coming, I better, get my act together and my workplace in order. No, if you connect using 1-5-30, it means check in once a day. And that's a quick check-in, say hi, see how things are going. Might be a couple of minutes, might be 15 minutes. Is there anything I can do to help? Was there a problem over here? Did it get fixed? Can I help get it fixed? Did you do okay at fixing it? And then you've got the pandemic side. So take the time to find out how people are feeling. We never used to push that, right? It was don't get, have a bit of distance, don't get to know your people too well. And those days are gone, particularly now. So you got to connect once a day, see how things are going. Then 5 is connect once a week. And that once a week is much more meaningful. 30 minutes, have a conversation about how the week went. Did you really get done what you planned to do or not? And then how come? What's the gap? What's the variance between what you planned to achieve and what you actually achieved? And if you do that once a week, then you get an opportunity for coaching and to figure out what development do people need. And then the 30 is once a month. Now let's have a really interesting conversation about development, about how the job's going, about how life in this business is going. If you've got some great ideas that you can bring. So if you kind of practice 1-5-30, you earn the right to have a conversation with people about their performance, and you'll learn a hell of a lot more about the business and what's coming at people day to day. So that's kind of the heads up. And the 1-5-30 go hand in hand. And then there's a whole bunch of skill sets that you can use to kind of fill those gaps. We talk about things like HeadsUP High 5, and that's just giving basic principles, almost life skills. You want to be able to have presence and people feel that you're present and that you're in the game. You want to have a vision for the team. Where are we going? What are we trying to achieve? You want to be tech savvy today. So it's not about forgetting about your technology. It's about how to use it to really leverage for results. And then you also want to be able to coach and influence. Coach the guys that are in your care, that you're looking after, and influence the guys who are at the fringe, who maybe they're not on your team. So if you kind of build those capabilities as just basic life skills in as a frontline, particularly frontline supervisor. You practice 1-5-30, and then you have some really meaningful conversations while you're doing that 1-5-30. You've already solved half of the problem of connecting with people and being visible in your business.
And it's interesting because you mentioned a couple of things that I focus on in the classes I teach, and that is being both a coach and a mentor to your team. A lot of people seem to think that they're the same, but they're very different. But they're complementary roles. And I think that it's so valuable that to be a good mentor, first thing you have to do is understand, where does your employee want to go?
Exactly.
What is their aspiration in life? If they could design their perfect job, what is it? But when you start to get that level of connection with people, and then you work to help them achieve that, it goes so far in getting them to want to work with you and do what you need them to do. And as you mentioned, the coaching piece of it is so important, because they maybe have an obstacle in their way. And it's not that you necessarily are teaching them how to do their job, but you just see things that will help them get better at doing what they need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And isn't that what it's all about? If you want to, this is the thing that I think a lot, particularly new next gen leaders, they see engagement as separate from the productive and, results of the business. And really what you want is people, productivity, and profitability. And when you understand that those are all in the same kind of ball, then you start to get really, really meaningful results. And more important, then you start to really have meaningful conversations with your guys, and your teams understand that, hey, we're going to have a conversation. I care about you. I'm going to give you the development. I'm going to give you the backing, the support, the mentoring that you need. But then we've also got to get our jobs done. And that's the way that we're going to do it. I'm going to focus on you, and then you're going to be able to use those skills to focus on the job and get the results. And bringing those two together, I think, is the key.
Yeah, I agree again 100% with that. I'm a fan of the book, The 1 Minute Manager. It's required reading in my course. But part of it is in the coaching piece of it, or in a redirect, what he would call it, where you're trying to help somebody adjust their behavior or even in the goal setting page. When you ask your employee at the end of a conversation, and can you tell me what I can do to help you?
Exactly.
That is so powerful, because what you do is you've changed the role from being an adversarial, I'm the boss and you better do what I tell you, to, hey, we're on the same team and I want to help you succeed. And as employees, I was going to say, as employees start to believe that and start to feel that, that's going to get them motivated to go. And I talk about the fact that if you give your team some autonomy, you give your employees the ability to make decisions, you empower them, you coach them, and then you encourage them, and then just get out of their way, because they'll accomplish things you can't even believe.
Exactly.
But you have to create the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the big thing that, again, next gen leaders, we really need to teach them that's what their job is. Their job is to enable people to do great work and to bring their best selves to work. And if you as a next gen leader understand that, and you're okay with that, then you're in the perfect job. That is such an important, I think that the frontline supervisor today is the absolute most important role in the company. It's more important than the CEO. Great, yes, we need a great CEO who's got the vision and does all of those senior leadership things that they need. But at the end of the day, people have to move. And so nothing moves until people move. And the frontline supervisor, the team leader, those guys are the only guys who are going to get people to move. And it's by doing exactly what you talk about. We talk about, there's 2 F's in my book that I talk about, which is fair trade and freedom. And they're both bookends of a real continuum, if you like, of things that you have to make sure in your workplace. And the fair trade is get all the basics right. Make sure there is a fair trade for your team, a fair day's reward for a fair day's effort, that you as a leader, that you're genuine, and that you give people a fair go. All really, really Australian terms, my roots coming out. But if you give people a fair go, that's about diversity, and it's about not leaning on the same usual guys to do everything. It's about giving opportunity to the greater team. And isn't that what people want? And then the other side of it is, once you're comfortable as a great frontline leader, you've got a team that can be freed up to do exactly what you said, which is get out of the way and let them do great work. And if you've got that rhythm of 1-5-30 or whatever you choose for your workplace works, whatever that interval is, but if you've got that 1-5-30, you don't feel like you have to control them, and they don't feel like they're being micromanaged. And that's where freedom comes in. That's where guys really get, I mean, people fight wars over freedom. That's how important it is in the workplace.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I love what you just said too, because one of the things that I work with the managers I train on is the need to think of their employees not in, hey, they're lazily worthless and I got to get a stick and beat them, but to think of them as being empowered. I use the term self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like if we tell our kids that they're dumb and stupid and they'll never amount to anything, we're probably right. But if we tell our team or our children that they're great and they can do amazing things and that we believe in them, and then we demonstrate that, we're right. And that is that expectation as well.
Yeah. Well, that's when you free people up to really be remarkable. I think the other thing that becomes really important is making sure that you're the guy, as the frontline team leader, you're the guy who has control over the environment as well. You're the guy who can fix the problems that are out of the control of people and the stuff that really cheeses people off. There used to be this great show in Australia called Hey, It's Saturday, and they had a segment that was called What Cheeses People Off. And people wrote in, this is 100 years ago, this is 30, 40, I think more than that now, when I was a kid. But people wrote in and said, what cheeses me off, and they would say sometimes the most basic things, but because they had to put up with it every day, it was the ultimate cheese off, and that's the stuff that you as a team leader, as it doesn't matter what level you are, leaders at every level in the business, you got to figure out what are the things that cheese people off and what are the things that really ruin their day. And that's about making sure you got a clean ecosystem, that the whole business is working for people, not against them. I use this really silly example of bad hair days, and it came from a bad hair experience. But I was traveling through London, and it was when one of the new terminals had opened, and one of the beautiful new lounges was available. And I was feeling quite special that I could go to this fancy lounge, and I went so far as to say, today I'm going to take a shower between my flights. And normally back then you wouldn't do that. And then I went, so worst decision I ever made that day. I decided I would wash my hair. How crazy is that? But I had time and I had the inclination, and everything was fancy, all the technology, bells and whistles, everything, except one thing. I got out of the shower in the cubicle, which was fantastic with the fancy cosmetics, the whole bit, and then realized that the hairdryer on the wall was one of those, no offense to the guys who still produce these, but one of those vacuum cleaner hoses that, the most it could muster to dry your hair was a bit of a, and that was it. And there's no way that my hair is going to get dry. And so to me, it was just a bad hair day. But what that is, we set up our guys at work all the time, completely inadvertently, with these bad hair days. And we think we've got all this magnificent technology and bells and whistles. And then some poor person every single day has to put up with a bad hair day, and bang, they're either disgruntled, not engaged, or they walk out the door. And so our job as leaders is figure out where all those bad hair days are, figure out what cheeses people off, what are the things that cause people to really gripe and complain, and fix it, because you're in control.
And that's so interesting. You kind of got to my next question, and that's great. One of the things, and I talk about this a lot in dealing with customers, but I think the same thing is true with dealing with employees, is we need to be willing to listen and be willing actually to ask the hard questions. In other words, what is it you don't like about working here?
Yeah.
And then create an environment where they can answer that question safely, and then be willing not to justify it, but to listen and make notes and say, and what else?
Yeah.
Until they completely get that out. Because when we can start to identify the things that are obstacles or objectionable to customers or employees, and we can start to get them out, because most of the time it is things that are there for no reason. It may be things that the company's going to be a lot better off if we fix them.
Yeah.
But if we're not willing to ask the hard question and then listen to the answer, it'll never get fixed.
Exactly. And what you just said then is the most important thing. It's probably things that affect the company anyway. So you've got the double whammy. You're more than likely going to fix a productivity or a profitability problem, as well as the gripes that are the problems to your people. And if you can do all of that, how great is that, to really look at it from an engagement, a productivity, and a profitability perspective? But one of the things so if you think about what you just said there, and that's asking the question. So you put yourself in a 1-5-30 situation routinely enough, then you've earned the right to ask those questions, because people know that you're sincere, that you're genuine, that you really do want to, you're in Australia, we'd say fair income, that you're really, really interested in solving these problems. But the other thing is that if you think about families when we were growing up, you'd all sit around the kitchen table and you'd have a conversation, and mum and dad would be talking about what they are. The kids would talk about stuff. Everyone would just put their stuff on the table, and you'd say, how's the day going? And the kid might say, school was a bit rough today, and there was a problem with this, and then dad would want to fix it, and mum would be the empathetic one. And I just think we have to get away from the meeting room tables and the boardroom tables and get into the lunchroom tables. It's kitchen table leadership. You've got to create an environment where people are really, really comfortable to just talk about what's going on, and not make it something that is special, that, oh goodness, I better not say this because the alarm bells might ring. We want the alarm bells to ring, because that's the only way that you'll fix things.
Yeah, no, I love both of those analogies, because and the challenge is sometimes, especially if it's personal to us, and somebody starts to tell us what we're doing wrong, we immediately go shields up, and battle stations. We're ready to go to battle, and we have to learn to be. I love the term servant leadership.
Yeah.
Because when your employees think of you in that way, is that what you care about is helping them be successful, and that's your focus, then they're going to be focused on the things that are important for you and for the company. And I love that as a thought process.
Yeah. And I think we have to be willing to depersonalize. I think there's a lot of, I think a lot of prickliness that comes up at work, because it's a very personal conversation when people talk about what's not right. And you have to, this was something I really had to learn, and it took me a long time, as I was, 35 years of going through different roles and different management roles. And then in the CEO role, you've got to depersonalize it. Otherwise you're going to go home and die. You're just going to feel like you've got all these bows and arrows, and the arrows are targeting you. You've got to say, this isn't about a personal thing. This is about, two parties wanting to come together and solve a common problem and get it fixed.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love the concept. So let me ask this question then. You mentioned 5 principles that you can start using today to boost workplace connections and profits. So you want to share those 5 principles for our audience?
Yeah, I think, we've talked a lot about, we have already talked a lot about what those are, but it's putting them all together that works for you. So, if you consider HeadsUP as being kind of the primary go-to, you get up in the morning. One of the things that I really believe is that nobody gets up in the morning and says, geez, I'm going to disengage everybody today and do a really lousy job. They get up in the morning and they say, oh my goodness, I've got a million things coming at me. I've got all these balls in the air. I've got plates that are spinning. I've got people over here, and, customers over there, and my production line, and there's just everything. And that someone expects me to engage with people. So you've got to figure out, you've got to really have the, the penny drop, as my dad used to say. You've got to realize that when the penny drops, it's that to fix all of those things, the spinning plates, the balls in the air, the problem over there, the challenge with there, it actually, the root cause is to get out there and get heads up and identify this stuff early enough so you can prevent it. And so if you consider you've got heads up, get your nose out of your technology and look, listen, and learn. That's a tool that you can put in place right away. You've got 1-5-30, nothing to stop you from today getting out there every day, 1-5-30. And the question I get is, well, 1-5-30, geez, that sounds like it's a lot. How much time should it really be? And the answer to that is, how long can you afford to go before you know something's wrong, before you know you've got to help someone? And that's the time interval. If it's not every day, then don't do it every day. Pick another set of numbers. But you really should, regardless of everything, try to focus on the week and try to focus on the month. Because if you get that done, there's your performance management system. And it's not a big, HR once a year thing. It's just a daily, weekly, monthly routine. So you've got another tool in that. You've got one of the things that I think people should try to practice really, really once every couple of months, stop and do a what color is my day. Have a look at what you plan to do. So say to yourself, right, I'm going to spend an hour with this team, and we're going to review where we're at with this particular project or client or customer or process. And I'm going to spend 2 hours over here. I know I've got some meetings, and go in and color code everything. And crisis is red, green is talking to people and connecting and doing development. And then pick your colors. I suggest a few. But do a what color is your day, and you will be amazed at the difference between what color you thought your day was and what color you actually had. And then you start to say, okay, I didn't do my 1-5-30 because I don't have very much green. I didn't do heads up because I've got no real development and problem solving. I didn't do any training. Actually, I spent a lot of my time red because I was in crisis mode. And that should be an indicator to say, I need to go chat with my guys and figure out how to prevent that crisis mode. So, there's all these different tools that you can bring. And then I guess one of the other ones that is really well known, but not, the world has done process mapping forever. When I first joined Proudfoot 35 years ago, first thing I learned how to do was a process map. And then we put it on the wall on brown paper, and we got everybody to take a look at it. And I think today what you've got to do is go even bigger than that. You've got to step back and do aerial maps. So we talk about really mapping the terrain and looking for all those what cheeses, the bad hair days and what cheeses you off. And if you can aerial map the business and look at the relationships between processes, who's talking to who, what's the structure doing, are people making decisions, then you've got a really rich way to say, here are some things that I need to fix. And guess what? If you fix those, you're probably going to have less spinning plates, less real balls in the air that are bright red and on fire, and you're going to spend a hell of a lot more time with your teams. So that's a lot of different tools, but they're all really simple, right? They're things that you can apply pretty much right away.
They are. And I love your mapping the day piece of it, because one of the sections in my course, I spent an hour talking about firefighting versus fire prevention.
Yeah.
Because too many times as managers, we spend our day fighting fires rather than spending time figuring out how we can prevent those fires from happening. It's kind of, again, there's another saying that I like. It talks about, and asks people that own businesses to think about, how much time do I spend working in my business compared to how much time do I spend working on my business? And so often we get preoccupied with the minutia, actually, to borrow from 7 Habits, we get focused on the sand in our day rather than focused on the big rocks.
Yeah.
And it eats up a day.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, if you if you connect routinely and you're talking about the performance of the business, not necessarily the performance of the individual. So, you focus on what are the outcomes, what are we achieving, and then work backwards from there. You'll have a conversation that's a lot less about defensiveness and much more about how do I close the gap between what I really wanted to accomplish this week and what I actually accomplished. And for us as management consultants, we use terms like variance management. It's the difference between the number that you plan to achieve and the number that you actually achieved. And really all that means is managing all those crisis moments out of the business, managing the problems out of the business. And if you're looking at the business that way, that's your prevention. That looking at that variance, that's what starts to squeeze out the problems from the business. You do that, you've got productivity, profitability, and I bet you your people will feel so much better, and you've got a more engaged workforce.
Yep, that is absolutely amazing. And Pamela, I really appreciate you being on the show today. It is so nice talking to you. Every time I talk to a guest, I learn, which is, if nobody else gets anything out of it, I'm getting a little smarter as I go, and that makes it all worthwhile. If you'll hang around for just a minute afterwards, we'll say goodbye to the folks and everybody that was watching today and everybody that watches on the replay. I'm glad you were here. We look forward to next week, and we'll see you then.
And Ken, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.